What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're gonna get started on the drawer build in the back of the 80 series. Just like the drawer systems I've done in the past, I'm going to be utilizing some 80/20 extruded aluminum. And if you guys haven't seen those videos, I have one where I built a drawer system in the back of my wife's 4Runner and then also a rear seat delete on my Tacoma. I'm not going to be doing the same style in this video. In the past, I've done the 80/20 extruded aluminum and then all the wood was Raptor line, at least all the exterior wood was. This time I'm going to go for more of the carpeted look. And actually the extrusion is just going to be more hidden until you actually go to open the drawer. Just going to give you a visual idea of what our frame is going to look like here before we get started. So typically in the past it's been a totally boxed frame. There wouldn't be any open ports or anything like that. So what we're doing on this one is actually having 3 main structures here. One in the back to tie it all together. Our middle beams you see here are for our drawer slides, which you will see later on in the video. And then our top is going to be 3/4 inch plywood. In the past I've done 1/2 inch, but since this is a sleeping platform and there will be body weight on top of this thing, I'm going to go ahead and stick with the 3/4 inch, and I think that'll suffice just fine. For anybody that's new to the channel, this is my 80 series. I've got 37s on it, 529 gears. A bunch of other stuff done to it. You can look back at the channel. I've got a bunch of DIY videos on this thing. So the plan here is we're going to have 2 separate drawers. They're going to be of equal size. The overall height of the extrusion is going to be 12 inches, and then plus the 3/4 inch plywood up top. It's going to be about 41.5 inches wide and then about 34 inches deep. So it should make for a lot of storage space and a nice way to organize with 2 different drawers. The 4Runner system I had 1 big drawer, which I do like, but I'm just going ahead and experimenting and doing this a little differently this time. So the plan is for this drawer system to actually double as a sleeping platform. So I just got my back seats sitting here. I have them unbolted from a recent trip, and I want to make it to where I can either utilize this sleeping platform when the seats are in the truck or whether they're not in the truck. So when the seat's folded down like this, it will be a piece that actually comes and folds down and lays on top of both of the seats when they're folded, and then I have a nice sleeping area. And when the seats are not there, I'm thinking about making some panels that actually swing out from the drawer system itself and then act as supports. And at the moment, that's just a rough idea in my head, and we're gonna feel that out when we get further on down the road. Here I'm getting the first wall assembled, and then I will go back and give you a rundown of the length of each piece of extrusion, what hardware I used, and how it's assembled. Our 3 horizontal pieces are 32 inches long with 1/4 thread tap on each end. Our verticals are 10 inches tall with 1/4 tap on each end as well. Our middle horizontal bar here is going to be what our drawer slide mounts to. This will mount to our middle bar with some T-slot nuts, and I'll get into that a little bit later in the video. There's many different ways that we could attach this horizontal piece here. What I chose to do was use our corner bracket here. I picked the one with 2 holes and then 1 hole on this side, and I did that because now this bar right here with all the weight can rest directly on this. It won't be able to shift, and when I'm assembling it, I don't have to make sure it's in a perfect position and that it's perfectly horizontal. This is just an easy, foolproof way to get your bar for your drawer slide sitting nice and level. Here I've laid everything out that we use to assemble one of these walls, and I'll go over how it works and how it's put together. Looking at our corner connectors here, when you buy these corner connectors, they come with your screws, and when you order your extrusion, you want to go ahead and do that 1/4 thread pitch tap. So these just go through the holes in our corner connectors and then thread directly in to our extrusion. And these are little locator tabs that line up with these channels to help make sure everything's nice and square. These are our corner brackets that are going to attach our extrusion that our slides are going to mount to. The drop-down menu on the website gives you the option to add in hardware with it. So there's no guesswork on length or what to get. These little inserts just slide into the channels on our extrusion, and then obviously you put your bolt through the hole and tighten it on down. Another tip for a more permanent installation is actually use a little bit of fingernail polish. It'll act as a Loctite, but not quite as aggressive, so you will be able to undo it in the future, but it won't end up rattling loose on you during normal use. Now we can assemble our other 2 walls. For the fingernail polish, I usually just do a dab of it, and I'm tightening these screws down with a regular screwdriver with the correct bit on the end of it, so they're not too extremely tight, but tight enough to where they're not going to come loose. With all 3 of our walls assembled, now it's time to join them together. I'll give you a rundown about this middle wall and how it's different from our sides. Our bottom piece, instead of being 32 inches like our middle and our top, this one is 33 inches. And it's 33 inches because it wanted to extend out to this end. We're going to take this plate, and this plate is going to tie all of these extrusions together, which in the end spaces our walls exactly as wide as they need to be for our drawers. Here you'll notice we have a bunch of T-slot nuts already preloaded in this back spine. There's going to be 4 hinges there's gonna be 2 hinges for each swinging door, and we're gonna stagger those and have those doors that are gonna swing out and help support our sleeping platform. So we went ahead and preloaded those in there, as well as the 2 T-nuts that we need to secure our plate. With all of our T-slot nuts in position, we can go ahead and assemble the frame. Once our plate is in position, we will go ahead and attach our sidewalls to the end of our extrusion. With our frame completely assembled, next we're going to work on putting our drawer slides on. There's going to be 3 screws in each drawer slide, and each screw requires a T-nut like this to drop into your extrusion. Because of the size of the holes that the front 2 screws have to fit through, you will have to take some sort of grinder and just kind of grind 2 flat spots. And once you grind your flat spots, then your screw will be able to fit through this slot where it needs to be. Installing the slides is the same process as any other screw. A little dab of fingernail polish. You may have to move these slides around to find the holes to actually access your T-nuts on the back side, and it can be a little tricky, but if you pre-place them according to the holes on the back of the slide, it makes it a whole lot easier. All right, with our slides all installed, we're gonna work on making our top plate here. So we're 34 inches deep and 41.5 inches wide. But when we're going to make our top plate, we're actually going to want it to hang over an extra 1/2 inch up front here, because our drawer faces are going to be made out of 1/2 inch plywood, and they're going to butt up against here. So we want our top to be able to overhang and cover that upper lip of our drawers. For our plywood, we are using a 4x8 sheet of 3/4 inch, and this is from Lowe's. If you can find Baltic birch, I'd highly recommend it. It will be more expensive. This is not Baltic birch. I believe this is just birch with a veneer face. Anyways, it has a nice finish and it'll be covered with carpet, so it works just fine for this application. Here we got our top all cut, and you can see with our 1/2 inch piece up front here, it sits nice and flush because we did that extra 1/2 inch overhang. Next, I'm gonna go around with a sander and just kind of get rid of some of these little burrs and stuff like that. And then we'll work on figuring out where we need to drill holes to secure this to the actual frame. So we got our top in position and we got it all clamped down so it's not gonna move around on us. What we're gonna use here is actually a jig that I made in past builds. So all I gotta do to actually make my holes line up perfectly with my T-slot is to just butt my jig up right here. And then as you can see, this line, it's lined up perfectly with the slot here. So then I just go ahead and drill a hole straight down through, and that gives me a perfectly centered hole, so I can go ahead and throw one of those T-nuts in the slot right here and just bolt this top down right to my frame. I wanna do 3 on each wall, I guess you could say. So it'd be 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. Now, obviously this middle one, I'm not gonna be able to use that jig I just showed you guys. So what I'm gonna do is get these edges all done. I'm gonna get them bolted up so they're nice and still and not gonna move on me at all. And then I'm gonna go through and make a mark dead center here and a mark dead center on the other side. And then after that, I'll go ahead and draw me a line all the way down through there. And then at my increments matching on this side, I'll go ahead and just drill a hole as straight as I possibly can down through there. Obviously, I'm not gonna have a jig to help me accomplish as nice of a hole as it's gonna be there, but I think it'll be easy enough to make sure that it all lines up. Don't get too caught up on being perfect when you're drilling these holes. You actually have a little bit of leeway as the screw is narrower than the slot in the T-nut, and then our hole that we're drilling in there kind of gives us a little bit of wiggle room. So if you're not perfectly centered, don't beat yourself up over it. It should end up lining up in the end anyways. Got all of our holes drilled here. The center holes were actually pretty easy to do. I knew it was 41.5 inches wide up top here. So all I did was take 41.5 divided by 2, and that's 20 3/4. So I made 20 3/4 mark here, and then on that end, and then went ahead and knocked this bottom frame around until it was lined up perfectly. Measured 1.5 inches in here, all the way to 17 inches for the middle, 1.5 inches in from that side. And then after that, it was just a matter of drilling the holes. So nice and simple, and now we'll be able to bolt this top down on here once we get our carpet on and everything. What we're going to be covering our top with is this carpet. I actually got it from Amazon. It comes in a huge roll. I don't remember the exact size. I'll have it linked in the description. But as you can see, I have a whole ton of it. This is an 8-foot table. So what we're going to do is cut out a piece, obviously larger than that, because we're going to have to wrap our carpet around the wood and secure it on the back side. To actually secure it to the drawer system, we're gonna use this stuff called Fuze-it by Liquid Nails. I got like 3 tubes of this. I'll let you guys know how much I end up using. And then also we're gonna use a staple gun. Now I've personally never worked with this carpet at all, or any sort of carpet. So I'm honest, I'll probably end up watching a YouTube video on how to properly wrap corners and stuff like that. And then I'll kind of transfer what I learned over into my own video here. So the back of this stuff's kind of rubberized. It's a decent thickness. It's not super thick, so I think it'll wrap around corners rather easy. But I'm also liking the fact that this rubber backing will probably make this Fuze-it stuff adhere to the wood very, very well. You may have noticed there are lines running on this carpet, so just make sure your wood is oriented how you want it so the lines run in the direction that you choose. All I'm using to cut the carpet is a nice metal straight edge and then a razor knife. With our carpet all cut out, I just did 3-inch border all the way around as our safety buffer. Now we're going to get prepared to actually glue it. So this is our top face, and what I'm going to do is take this caulk, that Fuze-it I showed you, and I'm going to put some on the top here, and then I'm going to take this trowel and just kind of spread it and try to get a nice even coat all the way across this thing so there's not going to be any spots where it can lift up. The trowel did not spread it out as I anticipated, but that's okay. It's plenty of coverage. It's not going to end up peeling up on us. And plus us stretching this carpet around the wood and stapling it is going to ensure that it's going to be a nice tight fit. To secure the carpet, I'm taking a pair of pliers, stretching it over the edge, and then using some heavy duty 3/8 staples. You do not need an air staple gun to achieve this, although it will make it a lot easier. You can do this with a regular manual stapler. So now that we got our carpet all stapled, now we're left with these corners right here. You're probably wondering what we're going to do with that. So what you do, and I learned this on a YouTube video myself, you actually basically cut all this away, cut this excess away, and then now we're going to be able to fold this down and staple it, and it'll complete our corner. So we'll go ahead and do that to all 4 corners. I played around with my cuts here as I was doing each corner and figured out what worked best for me. Doing a skinnier piece just wide enough to cover your slit and have a little bit of overhang seemed to work the best. With our table set back up, a frame up on it, we put our top up here, and we went ahead and drilled out our holes that were already there before. So what I did is I knew that it was 1.5 inches from here. I knew that it was 17 inches to the middle and 1.5 inches from the other side. So I just kind of felt around with this until I felt where the indent was, took my drill, and drilled all the way through it. Went ahead and did all 6 holes, so those are all drilled out and ready to go. So earlier when we were drilling our top, once the drill bit actually went through the wood and hit the extrusion, it left a mark for us. And from there, I actually took the drill bit and drilled a little bit of a relief. That way, in case our bolts are just slightly too long or they end up tightening down more than anticipated, there's somewhere for that bolt to go. And not to mention now with our T-slot nut, we know exactly where to put them so they're lined up when we're trying to get our bolts started with our top in place. Having your T-slot nuts in the correct position and also having your top in the exact same position you had when you drilled goes a long way when you're trying to line these bolts up. It's relatively easy. The first time I went to go do this, I thought it was going to be a lot harder than it was. Just take your time, make sure you don't cross-thread anything, and start everything by hand. That is the top all secured down for the final time. I used some screws that have like a countersink taper on there. I didn't actually drill for a countersink. I just kind of figured they would sink down into the carpet and sit pretty flush, which they ended up doing. This isn't the length I used. I'll post a quick caption of the actual length I used. I ordered 9 of them. They only sent me 6 of them, of course. So I don't have the screws for the middle here, but the way the carpet's set up, even though the holes are there, you can't really see it, and it's like sandwiched in there pretty good. So I'm just gonna run it with the 7 that they sent me. So I got 3 in the front, 1 in the middle, 3 in the back. That'll be good. I mean, it doesn't seem like it's gonna move around or anything like that. Here you can see our overhang worked out pretty good. So with our drawer face, we'll have 1/2 inch up front, and when that's carpeted, it'll end up sitting pretty flush with that. So next we're going to start working on the actual drawers themselves. I got a 4x8 sheet of plywood, and we just did 1/2 inch for the drawers themselves because we did 3/4 inch for this top. And what I've done is I've taken this program I use to design stuff, and I've done 2 4x4 squares because that's what I have, and I kind of planned out my cuts here. So these are my drawer sides, those are my 2 drawer faces, these are the false faces that will be behind the face, these are our bottoms, and then these are the backs. And this just kind of helps me make sure that I'm utilizing the wood the best I can and I don't end up running out of wood before I get all my panels cut. I'll highlight all my exact sizes that I cut as we go. I just wanted to show you guys this part of the planning process, as it really helps when you're trying to make the most of the wood that you bought. You'll notice I'm using a fence to help get my cut straight. I believe I picked this up at Harbor Freight, and it was actually really cheap. And for the money, I mean, this thing's pretty invaluable, being able to just clamp it onto the wood and make sure you're gonna get a straight cut. So what I've done here is taken our pieces that I showed you and then did a rough cut. So basically I oversized all these cuts just slightly, and then now that they're at a smaller, more manageable size, I can actually refine them on the table saw here and get a nice clean edge and a nice clean cut that I can't quite get with a miter saw. And obviously trying to do a 4 foot by 4 foot sheet with this little table just wasn't gonna work. So leaving that little bit of space and having kind of a rough cut that you can go back and clean up the edges on is really important to have a nice clean finish. Just to make my life easy as I was going along, as I went ahead and wrote what size I intend for each of these pieces to be, and I'll kind of cover in depth what size they ended up being after I get them all cut. But this makes it so there's no guesswork. I don't have to sit here and measure and figure out which piece is which. I went ahead and labeled it. For example, this is my rear face. It's going to be 10 inches tall and 18 3/8 of an inch wide. Although a table saw is not necessary for this part of the build, I do highly recommend it. It just helps you be able to duplicate cuts and make stuff the exact same size as one another, especially when you have multiples of the same size. With all of our drawer pieces cut to our exact sizes that we have marked on there, we're going to go ahead and make our liners for our drawers. So what I'm going to do is use the same carpet you guys saw me wrap the top in, and I'm going to make some liners that are actually going to go inside of these drawers, and then I'll have some trim to finish it out. A little bit more on this later, but I'm going to show you guys what I'm doing to prepare for that. So what we need is 4 pieces of carpet, the same size as our sidewall here, but we will have to cut a 1/2 inch off the carpet on the bottom just so it actually fits inside, because the bottom of the drawer is going to butt up like this. And then we will need 4 pieces of the size of our false face. So this will be the face that's going to be on the front of the drawer, and then our carpeted piece will go over top of this. So 4 pieces this size, and then we should have everything covered to be able to line these drawers with this carpet. One thing I failed to realize until later is that I didn't cut my carpet for my bottom section. So you will also have to cut the carpet that's actually going to lay on the bottom of the drawer, as well as your sides. So now we've just got everything sitting where it's going to go in our drawer here, and we'll go over some measurements. And now I did mess these measurements up a little bit. I originally wanted this to be 10 inches tall and somehow ended up with a crooked cut. So I shortened them down to 9, but we'll just kind of dive into here what we got. So this is going to be our front face. Right now I got them cut to about 20.5 inches wide and 11 3/4 tall. So this is going to cover that full face. And then once it's wrapped with carpet, you won't be able to see any of the edges. Now, because of the carpet wrapping, I may have to do a little trimming. We'll just have to see. It's one of those things I'm not gonna be able to tell until I get these drawers mounted up, and I'll mount the faces last. For what I'm calling our false face here, this is actually the cut that I ended up messing up. I cut this 16 3/8 wide the first time, and it should have been 17. Luckily, I had some scrap wood laying around. So 17 3/8 long and 8.5 inches tall. For our bottom piece here, we got 33 inches long and then 17 3/8 of an inch wide. Our rear face is running the full width of the drawer, so that one's gonna bump up at another inch to 18 3/8 of an inch wide and 9 inches tall. Our sides are gonna be 9 inches tall, just like our rear, and then we're gonna be 33 inches long, just like our base. Now, as far as our joinery goes here, you can make this a lot more complicated, or I guess you could say more correct for cabinetry work, and do some dovetail joints. That's a little more complicated, and I don't have dovetail tools. I've debated on getting them in the past, but this method has worked great for me, and it should work great for you guys as well, who aren't very experienced with woodworking. I'm not, super experienced myself either. So we're just gonna do a bead of glue in between all of our joints, and then we're gonna join them together just with a finish nailer. And this is a finish nailer. You could probably find one on Amazon for super cheap, and then you just need like a little pancake compressor and the finish nails, obviously, to be able to shoot them. But this is a nice, clean, simple way to join this wood that's pretty cost effective, and it's gonna be nice and quick. I like to clamp the bottom of my drawer to the workbench, so it's kind of a braced backing for me to press the finish nailer against. Just make sure you're holding the finish nailer completely horizontal. If you're angled up or down, you can end up having your nail poking through your top or lower surface, and it kind of ruins the piece. After it's all assembled, we're just knocking down all the edges with a sander and just kind of making this thing start to look like one piece. With it all sanded and clean, we're going to go ahead and wipe some sealer down on these drawers and let them dry overnight. So now we're just getting our drawers all set up in the height that they need to be at. So what I've done is I've done 1/2 inch and then 3/4 inch spacer. And the only reason I had to do a space underneath like that is because when I made the drawers, I actually made them a bit long so they would have hit this backside here. But that's okay, it tucks up nicely in there. And I don't have to worry about losing too much space underneath, because the way the tailgate's set up, this drawer needs to actually be up some. That way it doesn't drag across the tailgate when I'm pulling it out. And really my only concern is I wanted my JetBoil cooking system to fit in here, and it fits just fine. Even with how it's set up, we got probably just under 10.5 inches of vertical space. So still plenty of space. You can fit propane bottles vertical and all kinds of stuff. So I don't think I'm sacrificing much space by having to space it up there. So now that we've got our vertical spacing set correctly, we're gonna work on where we want the drawer to be as far as how it sits here. So you're just gonna go ahead, just like we did our slides, and put it flush with this. And that's gonna make this super easy, because when we pull the drawer out, and then we pull our slide out, we're gonna be able to pull the drawer out until we can access these holes. So as far as bolting it up goes, I can just slide this back to here, and we can go ahead and bolt the slide right to the drawer, go to the other side, do the same thing. Slowly work the drawer out until we got it completely bolted up. Be just as simple as that. Now for how we're actually attaching the slides to the drawer, we're gonna be using some 8/32 by 1/2 inch machine screws, and then these little thing called pronged T-nuts. You can find these at Lowe's, and once you drill your hole through this, you go ahead and line this up with your hole, and then start your bolt in the threaded part, and as you tighten it up, it'll dig these prongs down into the wood and create a nice solid anchor for your slide to mount to. The 1/2 inch machine screws are the length you need for it to be able to sit flush and not have any threads poking through, but you will need a 3/4 inch machine screw to actually get it started. So the 3/4 inch will stick through the plywood enough to grab onto the threads and let you sink that pronged nut down into the wood. So we got the drawers all installed. Soft close is really nice. I will say I've run into something on this that I've never seen before with some other slides, and I'm going to go around the back here and show you. So it might be kind of hard to see here, but this yellow thing is part of the soft close mechanism. So it locks into this position when you open the drawer because it's going to catch the slide on the way back. So when it's locked in this position and the drawer is coming back, you can see on the drawer right here where it was actually hitting. And I was hitting a hard stop on the drawers on the way back, and I couldn't quite figure out what the deal was. And then I took a closer look at it, ended up taking a Dremel and shaving this down, so now it actually clears it when it goes by. But that's just something to watch out for on these soft close slides. I've dealt with slides with soft close in the past, and I've never dealt with this. So just something to be careful of, because you never know, I could have ended up breaking that just trying to shut these drawers. So just take a little Dremel, file that down, and everything seems to be good to go now. So now we're going to work on getting our hole made for our latch system on the front of the drawers. This is the compression latch we're using. It's just off of Amazon, and I've used them on all the other builds that I've done in the past. So I'm familiar with how they work and familiar with how they mount. And also, luckily, on my very first build, I made this drawer and I was not happy with how it turned out and the materials I used. It was a really thin and just like cheap birch. So I ended up remaking it, but I had already made the holes for my latches. So now in all the drawer systems I've built, this has just become a tool at this point. So what I've done is I've centered these up on top of each other. I measured from end to end and made a mark right in the middle, and then I have a mark right in the center here, and then line these edges up. So now all I'm gonna do is take a pen and trace out my hole, and it just acts as a perfect little stencil for me to be able to just cut this out and take some of the guesswork out of this. Although you probably could accomplish this step with a jigsaw and a drill bit as a starting hole, I do recommend just using a router, as it just makes this process much simpler. With our actual drawer faces routed out, we can hold them up to our drawers and mark where we need to route out on those as well. All right, with our stuff routed out, basically this is allowing us to position this drawer face however we want. As you can see right now, as it sits, you go to close it and that latch isn't catching anything, but the fact that it's open, we're gonna be able to adjust this up and down until we get the correct height that we want for it to catch. Now what it's going to be catching on is actually this black bracket. So I was trying to think of different things it could catch on that would be inconspicuous. Thought about just kind of routing a hole on the underside of this lid, but I figured that would just kind of wear out over time. So if we can get this nice and centered up, screwed into place, it'll have a nice metal stop for this to butt against. Probably, you know, end up sticking up just like this. So once this is closed and the drawer face is moved up, it'll lock against this and be nice and solid. With our latches temporarily in place, we get to see what part of the backside of our face is going to be exposed, and we want all of this to be covered with carpet. So now what I'm going to do is take a pen and go around and trace a line all the way around, so when I take this off and we go to coat it with carpet, I know to what point I need to go past. So once we put our face on, it's a nice seamless edge transitioning from carpet to wood. So for my final measurement on my face boards, after doing some fitting and looking at it, I went from 20.5 down to 20 3/8 wide, and from 11 3/4 tall to 11 7/16. And that looked like that was going to leave me enough of a gap around the edges for the carpet to go in there and it not interfere with anything else. So one last thing before we carpet these drawer faces and put them on is I actually got to make a little room for this trim, because as you guys know, that front face is going to sandwich up even with this, and I got to leave room for this to be able to slip down in there. So what I've done is I've made a mark with how deep I'm going to go, and I'm going to take my router and just take off just a bit, so maybe just like a 1/16 offset this way, so that way when our drawer face is mounted up, this will still be able to slip down in that crack that we're about to form, so that way I can edge this whole top with this trim. Of course, if you're not installing the plastic trim, you can go ahead and skip this step. Although I will say I'm really happy with the extra effort I put in to make this happen. And just as we did our top of our drawer system, now we're going to go ahead and carpet our faces. We're using the exact same methods and making sure that our carpet reaches that line that we made on the mark on the back side. Alrighty guys, so here's the finished product of our faces. That's the back side. We did the same method that we did when we wrapped the top. Turned out pretty good. You can see I just made my cuts for my latch to go through. Really took my time to make sure this was nice and tight, and also that this reached the threshold to where it's not going to be showing on the back side of the drawer, and also tried to make these corners the best I possibly could. As I mentioned before, the carpet being a little bigger, I was just making sure that it would actually fit side by side, so I got them real nice and tight, and there shouldn't be any fitment issues as far as that goes. Now before we actually put these drawer faces on, I think what I'm going to do is go ahead and put these liners in. And I'm going to do that because on this front face, you know, once I get the actual other face on there and the latch in, it'll be a little harder to get this piece in here and cut around to make room for the hole. So I think if I just go ahead and get all this lined for the moment, it'll be much easier to just go ahead and do the face afterwards. When I went to start installing these liners, I had no intentions of doing staples on the inside, and then it became very apparent that I would need it. So I just did some staples around the edges. The carpet is nice and fluffy enough to where it actually just hides the staples, so you really can't even see them once they're in there. All right, we got our carpet liners all in. It looks really good, and I really like it over just having the wood base like I've done in the past. Before we can put our faces on, I went ahead and put our trim on here. I'm actually waiting for more of this to come in, so I'm just putting the front on for now so we can get our faces mounted up. It's basically just like C-channel plastic, and it's from Outwater Plastics. You can actually buy it on Amazon. It'll be linked in the description. I tried a few different ways to cut this stuff. I originally tried with my miter saw, but it was just a little too rough on it, and actually this stuff's a little brittle, so it would just crack and break. Best thing I could use is my oscillating tool or a buzz tool and just make my cuts, my 45s, using this to line it up. This stuff fits nice and tight. There's no need to put any adhesive or anything like that on there, and I'll be able to easily remove them and replace them if any of them ever get damaged. Putting our drawer faces on is pretty simple. We're going to be utilizing the finish nailer again. I did use a square to help me get lined up and make sure that I'm actually driving these nails into the exact spot that I want them to be in. Our latches come in real big handy here. It actually holds the face for us while we get everything lined up. So what we did for our latch catch here is we took this black bracket. It's just a little pack of brackets I got at Lowe's. It came in like a 4-pack. Obviously we only needed 2 for this. And then I took a bit and actually barreled out a little bit, obviously not all the way through, but it's deep enough, probably like a 1/2 inch or a little less than a 1/2 inch deep. That way our top on our lock on our compression latch can seat against the edge of the wood and also the edge of the metal. And the metal will keep you from being able, if it was just the wood, it might wear out eventually and all that, but obviously the metal is going to keep you from being able to do that. Got our left side all officially done. Has a nice catch for our latch here, and it's a nice and positive lock. Really happy with how that turned out. Still gotta wait for the trim to be able to do this one. It should be here in a couple days. So once it gets here, I'll trim this up, install it back in the drawer, and then this thing can go in the back of the truck and I can start planning the rest of it. So I've had the drawer system in the truck for quite a few weeks now actually, and I've taken it on a few camping trips and kind of used it how it's set up, how it is. And I've come to realize that I don't really want to add the sleeping platform. I was still going to even do these wings on the side, but I found that having this storage where I can just tuck a chair down in there or have my Pneumatic water jug that'll be taller than this sitting over there just kind of works out better for me than it would to add the wings. I really liked the idea of sleeping in the back of the Land Cruiser, and I have done that a few times before the drawer system was even there, and I really enjoyed it. But I think with the drawer system plus a mattress, I'm not going to have all the headroom that I'm used to having just from sleeping on the ground. So I'm really kind of leaning towards just leaving it like this. It's been working really great. This is what I've deemed to be like a recovery or a tool drawer. You can see I got a recovery bag, tools, and spare parts and stuff of that sort. And then this side has been more of like my cooking drawer. Right now I just got some parts in here because I was doing some other stuff to the 80, put some new locker actuators on it. And also one way I'm using to organize is actually these crates from Studio Design. Not sponsored by them in any way. I just use their products to help me organize things. You can take these dividers out and move them all along these slats here until you create you know, the perfect space for whatever you're trying to keep in here. So these do a good job of dividing up these drawers and allowing me to keep some smaller items from moving around, and then you can put the bigger items anywhere else.
Another factor that kept me from wanting to do a full sleeping platform is having a place for my fridge. So because of this fridge's height, just to do the sleeping platform, I'd have to pull it all the way out of the truck or put it in the front seat when I get to camp, and really just not something I want to do. I'd rather just have it set up like it is and just easily be able to pop in my fridge and get whatever I need and not have to worry about moving it when I get to camp, just so I can sleep inside the truck. This fridge is actually from Iceco, and they did just come out with one. It's like a 20-quart one that's a little shorter, so it's actually shorter than this platform. Now, if I wanted to get that fridge and put that in here and still do my sleeping platform and have back seats and all that, then I could. But honestly, in almost all my off-road vehicles I've had, I always end up pulling the back seats out just because of the amount of space that you get. So I really like this setup, and I think I'm gonna roll with this for now, but maybe sometime in the future, I'll expand and make this a sleeping platform. But for now, I'm really happy with how it is. As far as the tie downs go, you can see in the back, I've just got some turnbuckles, and that goes to a factory tie down point in the truck. And I've also tied my fridge down with just these little cinch straps, so that way the fridge can't go anywhere and the drawer systems can't go anywhere. Pretty much everything I've used in the video, I got links in the description. If I forgot anything, please drop a comment and let me know. If you guys want me to come up with some build plans for this thing, put together some plans on Shaper 3D and put it on the website. For the most part, if you just follow along the video and pay attention to all the sizes that I tell you, you'll be able to replicate this build exactly at home just by watching this video and not having to buy any plans. But if the plans are easier for some of you guys, let me know and I can start putting that together and I can get it up on the website and available for you guys. Hope you guys stick around. We got some more content for the 80 series coming up, and also got another big project I'm going to be starting here soon, which I think is going to be pretty cool. So as always, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.